Okay, let's see. Let's have the schedule from your CR. Then I will decide. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So today we are going to talk about the array data structure. So before we, as I said during our introduction class, that from array data structure I will talk about sparse matrices only, and we will talk about also a number of operations from sparse matrices. So before we move to sparse matrices, I just want to have some preliminaries, or the preliminary, or some basic notions which are used in array data structure. Okay, so what is one dimensional array and how a one dimensional array declaration is made. Okay, so first we write a data type, then we write the array name and the number of elements that are to be used in the program. Okay, so if the number of items specified, then we should declare the array, like we write the const constant int size, then we write the size of the array, and here array name is the arr. Okay, and the type of the elements in the array is float. Okay, so here we are using the floating point number elements. So this is the general format to declare a one dimensional array, and individual elements of the array that can be accessed by specifying the name of the array and the elements index. Okay, so if arr is an array, and we can write arri or arri3. So that means the when we write this, then we specify the third element in the array. Okay, here indices assume values from 0, okay, to number of items. Now array name identifies the starting location of the array. Okay, so here the array name is arr. So if I just write the array name, then that will specify the starting location of the array. Okay, so if we want to skip over 3 elements to get the starting location of the third element, then we can write arr3. So arr3 will take us to the third element of the array. So actually it is the fourth element. So when I write arr3, that means that will take us to the fourth element. Okay, so as I say, this element is the third element. However, the indices will start from 0. So how we make the one dimensional array initialization? So if I write int arr5 equals to these 5 elements, which are written within a pair of second bracket. Okay, so we can print these elements by using the printf function, and before that we need to write a for loop. Okay, so if I write a for loop, then we can get these elements to be printed in the output. Okay, now if I write another kind of initialization, like int arr5 equals to 98,87, there are only 2 elements. Okay, so in this case what will happen?
The garbage value will be there in the other spaces.
Garbage value will be printed. If I want to print this
So then only
print these
the
elements,
first two will be printed.
first two will be printed, and what about for other positions?
So no output.
No output. Have you tried this type of array initialization, one dimensional array initialization, where we write the dimension of the array, but we write the number of elements which are found to be very less than that of the dimension of the array. So it will take either the garbage value or it will take 0. Okay, for the remaining positions of remaining positions of the array, either it will take garbage value or 0. Okay. Now, can you draw the difference between the following two declarations for the characters? So here we have array codes, okay, and we have made the initialization. We have made the initialization for individual characters as well as for the string of characters within a double bracket. So if we try to print this array, then what will be printed for both the cases? If we try to print this array codes, then what will be printed? Any idea?
Both will
So the
print the
first
same
one,
thing, sample.
so for first one sample and second one, I think only S will be printed.
Why?
So because then the first will go out of space and there is no
Okay,
space
let
between.
me let me know how many. So what will be the dimension of the array if we want to specify the dimension for the array codes? Then what will be the dimension of the array for the first case and for the second case? If we just want to specify the dimension of the array, then what will be the dimension for the first case and as well as for the second case? Here the dimension is
5
not
and 1.
specified. Okay,
5 and 1.
5 and 1. If we write 5 within the third bracket, pair of third bracket, and we write 1 within a third bracket in the second case, then both will be printed the same character string. Why not 7? What is the terminal character? How the terminal character will be inserted? If we insert the terminal character for the first case in the initialization, then what will be the size of the array? 5 or 6? If we try to print this array for both the cases, then both will be printed the same. Okay, we need to just specify the size of the array in the for loop. Okay, so how many times the loop will be executed, so that to be specified in the for loop. And without using for loop, can you print the array, or can you print this string, character string?
So with put S.
No, you should try this. You should try these examples when you will coding these examples. Then you should try both these cases. Okay,
So with
so
printf
that
and increment.
huh?
Printf and increment.
Printf and
Increment.
yes, I just want to tell you that you can try this. You can try this by writing a code for this both the examples. Okay, so array initialization with integer numbers, array initialization with characters. So in both the cases you can see the differences, how this works actually. Now, how you will initialize two-dimensional array? Or first we go to the declaration part. So when we declare a two-dimensional array, we write the data type, then we write the array name, and we write number of rows and number of columns. Okay. So this is the general format to declare a two-dimensional array. And the number of rows and number of columns must be specified before we declare the array. Okay, so if we write the number of rows 100, number of columns 50, then we write the first the elements which are to be the two-dimensional array. So we write the first the type of the elements. Okay, then we write the array name, and then we write the number of rows. So here number of rows and number of columns. Okay, so individual elements of the array can be accessed by specifying the name of the array and the elements row and column indices. Okay, so how to initialize two-dimensional array? So this is very common format for initializing the two-dimensional array. Okay, so whenever we initialize a two-dimensional array, so here in the matrix form, the two-dimensional array initialize. Okay, but the compiler used to store the elements in a row in a one-dimensional array. Okay, so basically when the memory is used for storing these elements of a two-dimensional array or two-dimensional matrix, then the elements are stored in a single dimensional array. Okay, so here we can use the individual array elements which are passed to a function in the same manner as other variables. So here we can write suppose there is a function called max find underscore max. Okay, so we can write the max equals to find max in within a bracket. We can write the array arr1, okay, comma arr3. So now to pass the whole array to a function, we just need to specify the name of the array only. So we know all this. So here is an example. So here you can see that a prototype for the function find underscore average is declared. Okay, so here we write the prototype float. First we write the return type of the function. Okay, then we write the function name, and within a bracket we write the type of the array type of the array or array elements. Okay, then we put a comma and write the number of elements, the type of the number of elements. So here only the type will be written as an argument, and we write the return type first, then we write the function name within a bracket. We write the type as an argument. Okay, then we start the main function. So we use the number of elements that to be specified. Then we declare the array. Okay, one-dimensional array, and here cout means the printf. So here we cout is the part of C++ programming language. So here we can call the function find underscore average. Okay, so when we call the function find underscore average, then we just write the array name. So AR is the array name, and elements is the number of elements which are present in the array. Okay, so array initial we declare the dimension of the array, that means the number of elements to be there in the array, and the array is already initialized. Now we want to obtain the average of these elements which are present in the array or available in the array. Okay, so for that we need to define a function find underscore average, and this function is called from the printf function or cout function. Okay, so when this function is called, we just use the array name arr. Okay, and then we put a comma and write the number of elements to be there in the array. Okay, so here the float find underscore average, in the bracket we write int values. So and then we write the int n. So n is the number of elements. Okay, and here vals is the array name. So here we pass the array elements and the number of elements which are present in the array. So here all the calculations are made in this function definition. Then this function will return a floating point number or average. Okay, so average is a type of floating point number. So this value average will be returned to the cout function. Okay, and so what we want that this value to be printed in the output. Okay, so directly we directly we call this function find underscore average from the cout function, or we can write printf function. Okay, so we get the average and it will be returned to the called function. So here cout will print the average of this array elements. Okay, so let's start the sparse matrices. So in conventional matrix, we have the number of rows and number of columns, and when we multiply the number of rows and number of columns, we get the total number of elements that are available in the conventional matrix. Okay, so conventional matrix is essentially a two-dimensional matrix where we have the number of rows and number of columns. When we multiply the number of rows to number of columns, we get the total number of element. Okay, so this multiplication refers to the total number of elements which are present in the two-dimensional matrix. Now we can have the other type of matrix which we call the sparse matrices. Okay, so in the sparse matrices, the maximum number of elements will be found to be 0. Okay, so matrices with high proportion of 0 entries are called sparse matrices. Now there are two general types of n square matrices which occur in various applications. So the first type of n square matrices are called the lower triangular matrix. Okay, so lower triangular matrix where all entries above the main diagonal are 0, equivalency where 0 entries can only occur on or below the main diagonal. So this matrix is called the lower triangular matrix. Okay, so lower triangular matrix. So other type of matrix is called the tridiagonal matrix. So what is tridiagonal matrix? So in tridiagonal matrix, non-zero entries can only occur on the diagonal. Okay, or on elements immediately above or below the diagonal. So this type of matrix is called the tridiagonal matrix. Here you can see two different types of matrix. One matrix is called the lower triangular matrix, and another matrix is called the tridiagonal matrix. Okay, now sparse matrices are the matrices where the maximum number of elements are found to be 0. Now how to represent these sparse matrices, or how to represent a sparse matrix? So this is a sparse matrix where the maximum elements are found to be 0, or maximum entries are found to be 0. So only there will be a few number of non-zero elements. Here you can see that there are a few number of non-zero elements. Now if we want to represent this matrix using conventional matrix, then it will be a costly. That means for the zero entries as well as for the non-zero entries, so we have to consider the spaces in the memory to avoid such conventional representations. So we can go for some special representation. So in this special representation, we only consider the non-zero elements. Okay, so a sparse matrix can be represented by uh, ordered collection of non-zero elements only, or non-zero entries in the sparse matrix. Okay, so we can consider only the non-zero elements, and to represent this sparse matrix, we will use the three tuple information. So what this three tuple information represent, or how this three tuple information is represented. So we will use the uh, row number, column number, and the value at that specified position. That means if we consider the first row in this sparse matrix, then we can see there are only two non-zero elements, 6 and 9. Okay, so to specify the 6 and 9 in the ordered list, so we will specify the row number and the column number. So in this case, we will have the So in this case, we can see that row number is 1 and column number is 3. So we will use this three tuple information. So three tuple information uh, can be use the row number, column number, and the value at that position. So we will write the non-zero elements as a ordered collection of values, uh, which are associated with the row number and column number. Okay, now here you can see that for non-zero elements, we can write the column number, row number, and column number. Then we write the value at that position. So M13 will be assigned by 6, M15 will be assigned by 9. Okay, so M11 means the row number and 3 means column number. Similarly, here M15 will be assigned by 9, where 1 represent the row number and 5 represent the column number. Okay, so for the remaining non-zero elements, we can use the same representation, or we can use this three tuple information, three tuple representation, or three tuple information to write the non-zero element as an ordered collection of non-zero elements. Okay, now when we write a program on sparse matrix representation, or the operations which are performed on using sparse matrices, then we need to define the three tuple representation. Okay, so this three tuple representation is defined by type def structure representation. Okay, so we can write the type def struct element. So here type def means where we use the keyword type def to make make use of another name for the data type. Okay, so data type could have the another name, so that to be specified by the type def keyword. So here we write the type def struct element, and there will be three members, so int row, int column, and int value. Okay, if we consider the values are integer elements, then we can have row, column, value as an integer type. Okay, and then we have a structure variable element of structured element type. Okay, so here here you can see that element, after element we put a semicolon, so this element is found to be the structure variable for the structure element. Okay, now we can represent the sparse matrix using the second structure definition, where you use the type def struct spmat. So here spmat the structure type here. So here we write the type def struct estimate, and there are four members in this structure. So first member is the number of elements. Okay. So number of elements is type int, and number of rows and number of columns are type of int, and then we can write the element data 100. Okay. So here we can use the number of elements. So here we declare an array, or declare an array data, which will be a type of element. Okay, that means the structure type. Okay, so here the structure is the element. So when we declare data 100, this array as a type of element, then that means the element will refer to the structure type. Okay, and another structure variable spmat is declared, and we put the semicolon after that. So this is the sparse matrix representation using C programming language. So we can use two different structure definition, one for the element, another for the sparse matrix, and within the sparse matrix representation, we can specify the array array type as an element structure type. Okay. Now we will take an example. So in this example, we try to find the number of elements in each column of a sparse matrix. Okay. So here we will find the number of elements in each column of a sparse matrix. So here we define a function find. Okay, and here we are using two for loops. So before the first for loop, we make the count 0. Okay, and again inside the first for loop, so here a arrow refers to the number of. So if we want to invoke the number of columns, okay, so here a is the type of spmat structure. So here a is the structure variable. Okay, so this structure variable is used to invoke the number of columns and number of elements. Okay, as well as the elements in the data array. Okay, so first for loop is using to keep track of the number of columns. So if we consider this matrix, so here we can see that here we have the how many columns. Here we have 7 columns, and how many rows, and 7 rows. Here we have 6 rows. Okay, so here we have 6 rows and 7 columns. So in this function definition, the first for loop will keep track of the number of columns, and the second for loop will keep track of the number of non-zero elements. Okay, number of non-zero elements. So here inside the second for loop, or in our for loop, we have a condition to be checked. So here we write the a data dot column equals to I or not. Okay, that means whenever we see that a data j dot column equals to found to be I, then we will increase the count. Okay, and this increment of the count will give us the number of elements or non-zero elements in each column. Okay, and since the first for loop keep track of the number of columns, so for each column we get the non-zero elements, and then for here for the first for loop, which will vary from 0 to the number of columns, will give us the total number of non-zero elements which are found in the 7 columns, or if we consider this matrix, then in this matrix we can see there are 7 columns and 6 rows. Okay, we will obtain the total number of non-zero elements for the 7 columns. So initially we make the number of we find the number of elements for each column. Then we get the total count of the non-zero elements for all columns or for the 7 columns. So how many comparisons are made? If we consider P is a number of non-zero elements in the sparse matrix, okay, and the dimension of the sparse matrix is m by n. So what will be the time complexity then? This is your function definition. Find, okay, first for loop using for keeping the track of number of columns, and the second for loop is using to keep track of the number of non-zero elements. And whenever we see that a data j dot column is found to be equal to y, then only the count will be increased, okay. So if the p is the number of non-zero elements and the dimension of the sparse matrix is m by n, then what will be the time complexity, or how many times we need to compare the non-zero elements, how many times we need to compare the non-zero elements. The dimension of the sparse matrix is m by n and p is the number of non-zero elements. So number of comparisons will be p into n, okay. Number of comparisons will be p into n. So n means m means the number of rows, n means number of columns, okay. Now p is the non-zero element in so p is the total number of non-zero elements, then p into n will be the number of comparisons, okay. So in the worst case we will obtain the time complexity of order of mn, okay. In the worst case we will obtain order of mn time complexity. Now since number of comparison is p into n, so therefore the complexity time complexity of this algorithm will be order of mn square, because here n is the number of columns, n is the number of rows. So initially we will have the time complexity order of mn in the worst case, okay. So worst case time complexity will be order of mn. Since there is a number of comparison is p into n, where p is number of non-zero elements, n is the number of columns, so therefore the time complexity will be order of mn square, okay. Now can we improve this algorithm or improve this function definition so that we can have the time complexity order of mn which will be found to be less than that of order of mn square. So here we have the another version of the same function definition. So in this function definition we can achieve the time complexity of order of mn by using an array named column, okay. So here we declare an array col column of 100 elements, and if we write column I, then column I will contain the ith. So column I will contain the non-zero elements of the ith column, okay. So here we are using the 3 for loops. So first for loop will keep track of the number of columns. Second for loop will keep track of the number of elements. That means the non-zero elements. Okay. And again, when we will print the non-zero elements in each column, then we use the third for loop. Okay. So the first and third for loop will iterate for n times. Is that okay? Iterate for n times, since here n is the number of columns. Okay. And here column I represent the ith column. So if some value is assigned to column I, that means the non-zero element will be assigned to column I. Okay. So here column I will represent the ith column, and that will contain or that will be assigned by the non-zero elements. Okay. So therefore the first for loop and the third for loop will iterate for n times, and the second for loop will iterate for the p times. Why p times? Because p is the number of non-zero elements. P is the number of non-zero elements. So the time complexity will be order of m plus n plus p. So what is p here? As we know that p is the order of mn. So the overall time complexity will be order of m plus n plus order of mn. So so therefore the final time complexity that will obtain order of mn. Okay. So order of m plus n plus p. So as we know that p will give order of mn time complexity. So in place of p we will write order of mn. So therefore the total so the overall time complexity becomes order of m plus n plus p. So m plus n plus order of mn. So order of mn time complexity. So this is the improved version of the earlier algorithm. So in the earlier algorithm, both the algorithms will do the same thing. So we will find the number of non-zero elements in each column. Okay. So both this algorithm will do the same thing. In the earlier version of the algorithm, uh, it takes order of mn square time complexity, which is found to be greater than that of order of mn time complexity. So here we obtain order of mn time complexity in the improved version of this algorithm. Now, how to obtain the transpose of a sparse matrix? So here we have a simple algorithm for getting the transpose of a sparse matrix. So here we can assign the number of columns. So here A is the original matrix, original sparse matrix, and B will be the resultant matrix. Okay. So here A represent the original matrix and B represent the resultant matrix. So we can write B arrow or B dot number of row equal to A dot or A arrow number of columns. That means the number of columns is assigned to A. Number of columns in the array A will be assigned to number of arrays in B. Okay. So we can write B number of rows equals to A number of columns. Then we can write B number of columns equals to A number of rows. Okay. So here rows becomes columns and column become rows. And number of elements, that is the number of elements. So here the number of non-zero elements will be found to be equal. So therefore there will be no change. So here we can write B number of elements equals to A number of elements. Then we use a for loop, and this for loop will keep track of the number of non-zero elements which are to be assigned to the same entries same entries in the resultant matrix. Okay. Same entries mean the corresponding position will be same. So that is why we specify that b arrow data I dot row equals to a arrow data I dot column. Similarly, we can have the b arrow data I dot column equals to a arrow data I dot row. Okay. And value and b arrow data I dot value equals to a arrow data I dot value. Okay. So we just change the row and we just change the column row and column. Okay, and value to be assigned no, to the specified position. So this specified position, we obtain this specified position in terms of number of rows and number of columns. That means the row number and the column number will specify the corresponding entries in the resultant matrix. So this is the simple function definition for transpose of a sparse matrix. Any question from here? If you have any questions, you can ask me. Okay, no questions. And Pranab Bajpai,
Yes, sir.
you are the CR of this class.
Yes, sir.
So did you get my mail that I
Yes,
sent
yes, sir.
yesterday? So
Yes, sir.
have you thought about that?
Yes, sir. I'll like tell you the final one by today evening or tomorrow.
Okay, you decide about the schedules. Okay, so
Yes.
as I said that there will be three groups: group A, B, and C,
Yes, sir.
and time will be 90 minutes, 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Okay,
Okay,
sir. Yes, sir.
so you just provide me the schedule. So accordingly, I will conduct the lab classes.
Okay.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay. That's all for today.